18 now on your Saturday morning, and this week we learned more details about the death of former Broncos star Demaryius Thomas. Researchers who studied his brain found after he died that he had CTE. So this morning we have Dr. Eric French from MindSpa joining us now to talk a little bit more about CTE. We were talking about that. We think that these are going to be three letters we hear a lot more of as it's studied a little bit more, as it's screened a little bit more. But I think right now it's a good opportunity for us to get a firm grasp on what CTE even is.
Yeah, and it's really something that happens slowly over time, right? And so we have a lot more focus these days on concussions, but CTE is really that cumulative sequelae from multiple head traumas over time and seeing how that causes brain changes.
You know, and I think this was something that we only really ever heard of happening with boxers, of course with professional football players as well, but we are seeing this a little bit more. But you were talking about the fact that this is pretty hard to diagnose.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it's really only something currently that you can diagnose post-mortem. So when they do autopsy, there are certain things that they can see in cerebral tissue that are indicative of the process. But beforehand, we're still working on finding diagnostic indicators. I'm
curious about those indicators. What would CTE even look like in a person?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with repeated head trauma, there are axonal neuronal injuries. And so when the neurons are injured, they start to have plaques, they call them tauopathies, neurofibrillary tangles, all of these signs that the neurons have been injured. And it's kind of like building scar tissue in cerebral tissue, essentially.
How would you even begin talking to somebody about CTE? Because this seems like a really complicated subject.
Yeah, it's a broader concept, I think, but really if you were trying to talk to somebody about it that you were concerned might have some symptoms, you would focus more on the actual symptoms themselves than to really try to go deep into CTE. So, and that's kind of how it's treated right now, is sort of symptomologically, right? So people have some mood symptoms, they'll have memory issues, they'll have angry outbursts, and later on as this develops further, unfortunately, as it is degenerative, you start to see more dementia signs and even some movement issues like Parkinson's.
And you bring up a really good point because there are actually different stages of CTE.
That's
of
right.
course, they were talking about Demaryius Thomas was diagnosed with stage 2 CTE. Right. How do you even break that up?
It seems to me more so that there's a spectrum because there's involvement in things like motor and mood in multiple elements of the stages. But it starts with some simple post-concussive symptoms, headaches, memory issues, people kind of asking the same question or not remembering that you had a conversation about something yesterday, possibly some depression, maybe some anger outbursts. And we see that this progresses over time to incorporate more of the memory, more behaviors, a lot more confusion. And like I said, then it's, by the time you get to stage 3, about 75% of them, it's pretty clear have dementia.
You talked about the fact that this is mostly diagnosed or entirely diagnosed after somebody has already died. There might be a lot of people now, and we're going to have research probably going forward where people are questioning, am I living with CTE? And do you think that's ever going to be, there's ever going to be an opportunity to know that somebody has it before death?
I certainly hope so. I mean, they're looking at biomarkers right now and certain types of imaging that can sort of attach ligands to various proteins that are more common with CTE than other forms of dementia. And so as they sharpen that technology and get a better handle on exactly which biomarkers are very specific for CTE, we might be able to pick this up a lot sooner.
Yeah, Dr. French, unfortunately, I feel like I know the answer to this one, but that's why we like talking to you so much, because you can tell that this is your wheelhouse. You get excited talking about this. When it comes to CTE and it comes to somebody having it, do treatments even exist for it at this time?
Yeah, and they are mostly symptomatic. So I think that what we're seeing is a deeper push to understand this. And there's a lot of emerging technologies. Things like hyperbaric oxygen therapy are becoming a lot more commonplace. There's immunotherapies. And so I'm hopeful that the sort of control over slowing the progression of this process is going to be a lot better over time.
Sure, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but you just have so much knowledge about this that I'm really curious. What do you think the next steps need to happen as far as the research goes? What's happening now to help us learn and understand more about CTE?
In terms of the research, like we said, we were talking about sort of looking at how we can identify this a lot earlier. But there seems to be a greater focus right now on the causes, right? And trying to really mitigate from high contact sports, the protective equipment that we're utilizing, advancing that technology, looking at the contact sports and the rules of engagement to see if we can sharpen up and decrease the likelihood of the types of hits that cause this. So I see a lot of research being pushed in the areas of preventative measures at this point.
Sure, all right. Dr. Eric French with Mind Spa, we thank you so much for being with us this morning to break it down. Probably have to have you back because as we learn a little bit more, we're going to need to dive into that.
Glad to be here.
All right, Dr. French, thank you so much. We'll be right back.